Great.
I'm fine. You're good. You're good.
Okay.
So as people are filing in, we'll get all of the, businessy, boring stuff out of the way. First off, thank you everyone for coming tonight, both authors and readers. We're still here in these strange times, so everything is still on Zoom or Crowdcast, and we really appreciate everybody getting back on their computers at night to do something fun and book related. So we really appreciate it. If you're joining us not in New England, just a little bit about Belmont Books. We are in the greater Boston area, outside of Cambridge. We have a pretty robust event schedule just because everything is virtual now, which has been really fun to connect with authors who might not be able to tour near us. We're lucky enough, though, to have a New England author with us tonight, which is Kat. But for the rest of the week, tomorrow we have an event with Misako Rocks, who's like this amazing Japanese manga and graphic novelist writer and illustrator. And so she's doing an event at 6:30 for her new graphic novel called Bounce Back. I think it's kind of YA, middle grade. And then we have the US launch of Allison Jean Lester's novel, Glide. And I think she's going to be in conversation with the photographer who did the images for her books, Andrew Gurnett. And then Thursday is our monthly story time. So if you have any little ones who like a bedtime story, we have 3 picture book authors and illustrators join us each month for a little story time event, and they'll all read from their picture books, and hopefully it's nice and cozy. And then of course we're off for a week for Thanksgiving, and then our events pick back up. If you've never attended a virtual event with us, welcome. I will introduce both authors, so Genevieve and Kat tonight, and then they will talk for about 40 minutes or so, and then we'll turn it over for questions. If you would like to ask a question to one or both authors, we highly encourage you to do so. You can either submit it in the chat, which should be open and available to you, or there's a Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. It looks like 2 little speech bubbles and it says Q&A. I will be monitoring both, so if you forget or you can't seem to find the Q&A button and just want to put it in the chat, that is totally fine. I will most likely catch it. So let's get started. I'm going to introduce our moderator, Genevieve, first. Genevieve Gornichec earned her degree in history from The Ohio State University, but she got as close to majoring in Vikings as she possibly could, and her study of the Norse myths and Icelandic sagas became her writing inspiration. She lives in Cleveland, Ohio. The Witch's Heart is her debut novel, and it's coming out in paperback at the end of this month, if you're curious and want to pick it up. We were just looking at the paperbacks before the event. They look beautiful. And now we're here to see Catherynne Valente. I'm so excited. Kat is the New York Times bestselling author of over 24 works of fiction and poetry, including Palimpsest, the Orphan's Tale series, Deathless Radiance, and the crowd-funded phenomenon, The Girl Who Circumnavigated Fairyland in a Ship of Her Own Making, and the 4 books that followed it. She's a winner of countless awards, including the Lambda Literary Award, Locus, and Hugo Awards. She's also been a finalist for the Nebula and World Fantasy Awards. She lives off an island, coast of Maine, with a small but growing menagerie of beasts, some which are human. We have heard tale that there might be a Maine Coon wandering around during the event.
Lord Byron may show up.
He may show up.
He loves to be on camera. Also, Genevieve, I moved here from Cleveland.
No way.
Yeah, no, my phone is still a 440 number.
Oh my gosh, so wide.
Yeah, 440 again.
Nice.
But I'm going to turn it over.
I used to live in Chagrin.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I'm
So,
from Wycliffe.
Cleveland party.
Yeah. Nice.
All right, Genevieve, are you ready?
Yeah.
All right, I will be back in 40 minutes or so.
Okay. Hi, Kat.
Hey, what's up?
Oh, so I read this in like one sitting yesterday. Usually that sounds more impressive, but
no, it's fun sized.
Yes. But it makes me feel accomplished because I'm like, I read a book. This is a book, and now I can add it to the list of books that I've read this year. And I have so many questions. Like as I was reading, I was like, I have so many questions. And a lot of the questions were answered by the end of the book.
Yeah.
But I guess so, like when I was reading, I usually, if I know that I like am going to read a book, usually I don't read the inside flap. I just like don't want to know what to expect. I want to be surprised. So like as I was reading, I was like, I feel like I should know what's going on. There's like they're animals, and like what kind of fairy tale is this? And then the reveal, and I was like, what? So like, but you don't. And then I went back and reread the inside flap, and I was like, you don't. I never would have guessed. I never would have guessed what this was about. So like, was that intentional? Like the vagueness of this?
Yeah.
Like,
So I'm gonna say we're gonna get into it tonight at least a little bit. Like it's been a week. It's short. Like we're not gonna be quite as coy as we have been about the ending and the twist. But it has been the hardest book to market because we are like, just read it, but I can't really tell you what it's about. Promise it is speculative, but the fashion in which it is speculative like is the thing. So we've been talking about the Stepford Wives a lot as a comparison, not just because it's a suburban sort of horror, but because you wouldn't go up to somebody and say, hey, you want to read a book about robots? Like, it's not robots, but that's the level of like the premise is the reveal that was going on in this book. So a lot of conversation, both in writing it and in marketing it, has been about like, how do we get people to read this without giving the game away? And like, we've everybody who got an early copy are like, when did you know? And it's all different points in the story, which is great. That makes me feel awesome as a writer. I don't always pull a twist ending off, but I prefer to people to actually be surprised. And like when Shauna McGuire said that she didn't get it till the end, I was like, well, I crushed it then, because I thought Shauna would know what I was about from the jump. And even my husband was like, I don't know, like, with the title and all the chapter titles, and like, I feel like in the animal stuff, like, I feel like it's pretty easy to guess. Like, you've known the concept since before I wrote like anything down. So of course it seems easy to you. But I think that part of the reason that it seems to, like, I have not yet, knock on wood, have not yet talked to a person who said, oh no, I got it right away. And I think that part of the reason that works is that there is kind of a blue herring in the whole Bluebeard thing. Like, if you are genre savvy and into your fairy tale retellings, and like, which way is up and which way is fae, then I think what you're going to think is, oh, this is a Bluebeard story. Got it. I'm on it. I figured it out. And kind of put that on your back burner. And so what it actually is comes out of left field, but it is set up from the very first sentence. Like, I knew when I had the notion of this, it wasn't supposed to be a book. I thought it was going to be a short story, that I knew where it was going to start. I knew where it was going to end. The mirroring of the beginning and the end, I knew I was going to do that. Like, I knew a lot of the spots on the way to get there. Like, it all kind of was a whole egg before I started writing it down. So it's pretty easy to thread, especially something like this, which is, the definition of the word iconic, like pretty literally iconic. Like, it's not hard to pull that through when you know where you're going from the start, which is, I haven't really written a mystery or a thriller before. Like I wrote a book called Radiance, and it's about a missing person, so it's kind of runs on those rails, but it is also a total deconstruction of several different genres, so it's got a lot of other stuff going on. This is probably the truest horror and the most sort of straightforward thriller that I've written, and turns out it helps to know who done it before you start writing things down.
I had no idea. I'm not familiar with Bluebeard, so I was guessing right up until the end. So
yay,
you got me. And it was a lot of fun. Like creepy, but a lot of fun. But you mentioned that this is the first like really like thriller kind of that you've written.
Yeah.
This was actually my first Cat Valente book. It certainly will not be my last.
That's a big punch for a first.
So
we were talking about space opera before we started, and if that's your next one, that is some whiplash.
I really want to read that one though. Like, all you had to say was Eurovision, and I'm like, I'm in. Like, I'm in. But yeah, I guess like so that kind of answers my next question, which was like this was my first Cat Valente book. Like, was this totally like left field, or like are any of your other books like at least similar, or was this like a totally new frontier for you all
I
over?
mean, I think if there's fans watching, you can put it in the chat and disagree with me. I think it's pretty unique on a couple of different bases. One is that I don't write housewives ever, and it is the two novellas that came out this year, The Past is Red and Comfort Me with Apples. They're both strong voice, single POV characters, where the pace at which they are given information is really a major cog in the book. Like if it were an omniscient point of view, I wouldn't be able to play these little games in either book. But both of them are wildly different than me, and strange to write in that way, because Tetley from Past is Red is a massive optimist, undying optimist, and I am as cynical as they come. And Sophia is so completely fulfilled by serving her husband. Not my gig. I support alternate lifestyle choices. She is valid, but it's not my thing. And so it was really strange to write her in that way, because especially in that first chapter, before, most horror kind of starts out with the world being okay, and then it goes to shit. And it's sort of the same structure as this. And in that thing where the world is her oyster, and the way that she thinks that it should be, it is very, very weird to write somebody who's just like, ooh, I get to clean the house today. But I like, it's part of the fun of being a writer, is that you put yourself in alien mindsets. And I think that it's though the first chapter is pretty florid, deliberately, it gets into sort of a lot more straightforward plot and language than I usually do, and it does try to pull that twist ending thing off, which is not always where I'm headed with my endings. I mean, Fairyland has a pretty good switch at the end. Space opera goes where you probably think it's going to go from the beginning. That's not the point. The journey is the point. Like, so I don't usually do that. And it's short and it's lean. The story of how this got published is just so bizarre. I feel like I have
That was going
so
to be
many
my
stories.
next question.
Yeah.
That was gonna be my next question.
Oh, somebody said it was reminding of The Sin of America, which is a short story of mine that came out earlier this year, reading Comfort Me. That was, I can totally see that. There's that kind of food thing as well. And it goes real dark at the end. But yeah, so I could kind of see that. Yeah, the gluttony, the gluttony duology. But yeah, so how it got published. So basically in 2017, I was in Warsaw for a convention that I was guest of honor at. And I came across a little bit of folklore that is in there. One of the wife that is built in full view of everybody, and is all gooey and gross, and he can't take it. That's actually a real piece of like apocryphal, from the same place that we get Lilith and all that. It's a real piece of apocryphal Talmudic writing. And I was just like, dude, come on, how many did you go through? Like, what's the matter with you? Yeah. And so I had this whole notion, like really where like the whole thing was in my head, and I wrote the first part of the HOA, the homeowners agreement, in that hotel room, and the first sort of passage of the first chapter. And then like I got busy with the convention, and then I got pregnant, I had a baby, and then I had a pandemic, and it was like this whole thing was nuts. Actually, that's I wrote it right before lockdown. So like we knew COVID-19 was, well, we weren't calling it that, the coronavirus, as though there was only one. We were calling it that, but essentially it was the first, my baby was just about a year old, and it was the first time I had been like by myself. I went to a hotel for 3 days in the dead of winter in Maine. They're very cheap when you do that. And like nobody could pull my hair or demand that I feed them or demand anything from me. I was just on my own for 3 or 4 days. And apparently I had a lot to say. I wrote the whole thing then in that hotel room. And I had been asked to write a short story for Tor.com. And I sent it to my editor, Jonathan Strawn, who I adore. And it literally, the subject line says, "Sorry, I know it's too long." And I was like, I know, I'm sorry. I could have made it longer. I restrained myself. But it was like a polite cough short of a novella, even when I turned it in. And he said, I think we can work with it. Like it's over our usual length, but I think we can work with it. And then a couple months later, I got an email from like the whole team at Tor.com saying that they really, really love it. And they really feel like it's something special and shouldn't just go on the website, and they want to do it as a book. So if I wanted to expand it, as I said, I could have in my other email, then they wanted to do it as a hardback. And I was not even aware that that was an available outcome to turning in a short story that went too long, but apparently it is. And so it kind of started this whole crazy thing. And I've heard sort of through the grapevine that they had this piece of cover art that they loved and didn't know what to do with, and it seemed to fit this so perfectly. And so it's all been pretty cool. But that is an insane story of publication. That is not how things usually go. And so yeah, it was between sort of the bit of folklore and the notion of using the homeowners association as a stand-in for what it ultimately is a stand-in for. And I just loved that as someone who, I've never lived in an HOA controlled neighborhood, but I have lived adjacent to them, and have always thought it was such a weird little bit of like, I don't know, lawful evil in that we have to deal with in this world. And I literally was just reading an article today about Perth, Western Australia is suddenly springing up with homeowners associations all over the place. It's like, no, don't do what we did. It's awful. But that was probably the most fun bit of research, because I had to like go find the worst homeowners agreements in America. And so here's the funny thing about the reason I brought up that Perth article. So here's the funny thing. So most of the things in the homeowners agreement that is revealed through the course of the story, most of those are very similar to ones in real HOAs, and I just sort of made them slightly more evil and sinister. But the one that everybody talks about is right there in the beginning, where it's clear that this is not a normal HOA, which is that you can't plant things that obstruct sightlines into the house.
Yes, right? That was the one where I was like,
yeah. So that was my own, not limiting planting things, but obstructing sightlines. It's right in the example HOA that this article was using to say that Perth is now going to go the way of America, and it was you can't build things that obstruct sightlines into the property. I was like, it was not a how-to. Yeah, so I can't even say that one's over the top now. Most of them are just things from real HOAs.
That's wild. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
like that part of the book was just very, like, I think it blended in so well with like the overall like just atmosphere, and really kept me on my toes. I was like, what happened? I don't know.
Well, the suburbs are hell is not a groundbreaking statement. We've been basically writing fiction about that since suburbs got invented.
Right. It's just fascinating. It's like, oh my gosh, I have so much that I could like say about this book and like, sing its praises. But like you mentioned earlier that like at the beginning it was kind of like, the prose was a little like over the top, and then you kind of it got leaner, and like you just told what was happening. Like I picked up on that. Like that was, because it's something this short, like every word matters. And I just thought that was brilliant. Like, especially like the repetition, like everything's perfect. And then like all of her like animal friends, like their dialogue, down to their dialogue tags, like she coupled adverbally, like, like, and I was just like, this is, like, just even though this is the first book that I've read by you, like I was like,
Thank
this
you.
author like knows.
I
Like,
really appreciate that. That's kind. The audiobook narrator did a really great job doing the neighbors. And when we talked about it, she was like, oh, I'm going full drama school on this, like full, like be an animal drama school. And her name's Karis Campbell. She's just a phenomenal actress, and she's done 2 of mine now. Refrigerator Monologues is the other one that she did. She's great. But yeah, no, it starts out this kind of dreamlike. Yeah, I'm fairly known for like dreamlike florid prose, but there's flowers everywhere, and there's fucking Disney bluebirds and whatever. And there's also a real sort of slow pace to it, like the pace of life in that neighborhood. And then it just sort of gets leaner and more pared down and more fast-paced as it goes along. And it also sort of draws a contrast between like all the things that she's describing in that first chapter, and then when she opens the drawer and the smell of the hair and the brush is like, rotting bodies and all, like it means that sticks out a lot more. And then by the time we get to the end and like, she's saying things like, you fucking pig, like that's not, you don't think that the phrase "you fucking pig" is going to be in this book from the way the first chapter is written. It sort of progresses
exactly. Like as soon as I was done, I was like, I need to read this again from the beginning. Like I just, as soon as I was done, I was like, because it's just so good. It's in her dread increasing throughout the book as well. Like
poor little thing.
The knife block. I was like, ugh.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, and in my head, it is my knife block, and there's that little wider bore hole that your sharpener goes in, and like every time I look at it now, I'm like, you be empty,
or else. Oh my gosh.
But yeah, I mean, it was a lot of fun to write, and it was I knew I was gonna do bad stuff to her. Like it kind of goes with the territory, but I knew what that very last chapter was going to be from the minute I wrote the first line of the first chapter, and it was just wanting to get there. And we talked about like Stepford Wives, and we've talked about I mean the publisher, Gone Girl and Spinning Silver, and some of these other sort of bad marriage stories. But it's funny that we did, like, Stepford Wives is a fair, like, only a couple months ago we started going like, oh yeah, Stepford Wives. But there's also A Good Marriage, the novella by Stephen King, which really blew me away when I read it. It's in one of the greatest titles for a short story collection ever. I literally rolled my eyes when I saw it. I'm like, fuck off, that's so good. Full Dark, No Stars. Oh, I know, right? It's just so good. It's such a, like, come on, dude, leave some for the rest of us. But there's I think it's a novella, I think it's a short novella in it called A Good Marriage, where a woman finds out that her husband's a serial killer. Like, she finds the driver's licenses and a rubber band, and it's pretty late Stephen King. I was a huge King fan for like most of my life. A lot of his more recent stuff doesn't jive with me. Oh my god, I will never forget that. It's so well written, and it's so simple because there's no supernatural element to it whatsoever. So it's just this awfulness. They made a good movie out of it, but I think that sort of, that first scene when she's discovering something, but she doesn't want to think about the implications of that thing, but she can't stop herself still looking for more. Like, I think that really was a big influence on the similar scenes in this.
I really enjoyed that. And even like you said, like the symmetry between the very first like chapter where we see her, like even down to the lines, but they're like, so it's also like slightly different. So like, because at the beginning you say the place where her husband, she runs her hand over the side of the bed where he rarely ever is, and then at the end someone else runs her hand over the place besides where he sleeps every night. So like already there's this difference. And I was like, oh, okay, so now I need to listen to the audiobook because that sounds amazing. So when you were writing this, and I couldn't quite envision it because, and I think that you were being vague on purpose, because like I said, when I was reading this, I was like, she knows what she's doing. Like, I'm going to trust the author. Did you actually like envision the animals as animals, or no?
No, I felt like it's a very liminal thing. Like what does she see when she looks at them versus what do we see? It's all, the animal thing is probably the most delicate writing certainly in there, but a lot of the most delicate one I've done, just to say just enough, but like don't look this way, don't look that way. Yeah. And so I think that they could be real animals, but they could also, in this sort of mythological setting, could be, could be more shaped like people that embody the traits of those animals, because like there's only one for each. Like Mrs. Lion has kids, but like it's mostly just like the one and two representation, which sort of calls forward to Noah and all that. But like definitely Cascavel is shaped like a man. And I feel like I want to point out that Cascavel is a real snake, and I found the prettiest snake name to give to my handsome man. I really, when I found that one, I was like, oh, it's so good there's a snake called that, because that is excellent.
That is such a good name. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'm real pleased with it.
I'm like, there's some animal things going on here. I'm gonna Google this. But like, yeah, when I was reading, and you mentioned like, oh, they have like the people, the animals had like hair colors, so I was like, okay, they're people. And then like Mrs. Lion is like licking the heart, and I'm like, are they people? Are they? There's like just this mental image of this woman just like licking the aorta of a heart.
But see, like I like that just as well as I wanted it to be ambiguous whether they are actually just full-on animals or whether they are, some kind of Nephilim type animal avatars. Either way, I'm happy with that. But I also think the heart was one of the things where I was like, oh, I really like what I can do here, because I love the idea. I mean, it's why I don't want to say, oh, they're definitely animals, because I love the idea of a like proper suburban housewife just eating a fucking heart at tea. Like, I love it. I love it. Is that not what a Karen does? Yeah. Come on. Like, I'll eat your heart in the marketplace. Like I really I loved her gifts that she's preparing so carefully and presumably beautifully in the first chapter, turning out to be these actually really weird stuff when she gets over to the house. I was just looking over to the chat because people.
I was also looking at the chat.
Yeah. So and I love Mrs. Lion too. She's just such the southern kind of queen bee, who's not a bee, but I liked writing all the women, and I liked sort of dancing around with words like bubbling and things like that. You can just I don't know that I could have really kept it up a lot longer than this. Like, it's pretty rough to just. Kind of like the city in the city. Like, it's pretty hard to just deliberately not look to either side, like and walk around the parts where you cannot have the reader look, or it'll all be spoiled, Right. And that's one of the joys of a really tight individual point of view.
Yeah, I thought that was masterful. Like like I said, I knew it was vague on purpose. I just wanted to like know your opinion of like what you thought personally. So I like that you kept it ambiguous. I
think of it as coy.
Yeah, exactly.
It's all very coy.
Yes. Heather, I had the same exact thought in the chat. Heather said, I had to go back because at that point I hadn't caught on, and then an HOA rule was no kids, and I was like, wait, the babies, the kittens? Yeah, I had the same. And then like by the end,
it says in the very beginning that the rules are only for the residents of Cedar Drive.
Yeah.
Like, it's really easy to miss that. And again, very deliberate to use overwrought legal terminology and too many subclauses. So you miss that by the end of the paragraph, it said it only applies to these two people.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I didn't even catch that. Like, until, like, I'm embarrassed to say how much later. I'm like,
that's okay.
I'm just, like, look, I'm a very easy reader, though.
The first line of the book is the first day of the first month, and then just doesn't say which day or month that is. Like, so much of this book is what is not said. is the part of this sentence that should go on but doesn't.
Right. It I just love it. Like and just like talking to you about it makes me love it more. If that makes sense.
I'm so glad. Like, it's fun to talk about because I've not been able to talk about it for like a long time. But like it's doing this kind of thing, and like it's like the cat who ate the canary. Like, you feel like you're gonna mess with people, and it's exciting when they are messed with in the way that you intended.
Yeah. But so
I mean, like one of the things, like you said, like looking back through the things you didn't notice, and it's all, I mean, it is all there. It's all there from the beginning. But part of the reason that it is that I really powerfully believe in playing fair with the audience when it comes to a mystery, and when it comes to speculative elements too. But I think the rules of what playing fair means is slightly different. And I believe that in every mystery, it should be solvable by the audience. That is not what all mystery writers believe, but I do. I am never satisfied with, oh, it was just some random guy who we've never heard of until now and could not possibly have made any headway towards figuring out. If it's not necessarily if it's just a random murder in an otherwise story, but if the point of the story is a mystery, we should be able to solve the mystery. So it is all in there from the beginning. If you have a really specific set of knowledge, and if you are trying to figure it out, like, it is all there. But boy, it has got to be extremely specific set of things that you know. And again, I fooled Shauna McGuire, so I feel good about my folkloric chops there. I was so sure she would just know. She'd look at the front cover and be like, I know what this book is about. But yeah.
That's awesome. I can't believe you fooled her either. Like, like you should make like a medal, a sticker that you could just wear around. I would probably do that because that's like a point of pride.
She if I breathe a word, she'll make ribbons for the next convention. So.
That's awesome. Have you been to conventions with her before? Like,
Shannon and I have been close friends since 2009, and we've been to many conventions together. We've been co-guests of honor. When we are at conventions together, we usually try to convince them to let us do our In Conversation show, because we both are sort of comedian adjacent. So we do this like kind of evening with Kevin Smith thing. Shannon and I are old friends.
That is so awesome.
Yeah. Heather, what was that Heather was saying about? No, why is it pulling up participants when I hit chat? I'm on my phone, so. Yeah, see, I remember thinking that's biblical and forgetting about it 2 pages later. That, I mean, that's part of what the sort of Bluebeard feint does. And also that just like, it seems like there are things there that seem impossible to be part of a story with this setting. Oh, remember I said my cat would come by? Say hello.
Oh my God.
Say hello.
No.
Say I'm a large man. This is Lord Byron. He is my very large Maine Coon cat.
Oh my goodness.
And he loves to be on camera.
Oh yes.
Please don't mess with me. Oh God. This is why I was warning Amanda in the beginning that this may happen.
My cat could also usually sense when I'm on like a call, and then he decides that it's time to sing the song of his people and just like appear out of nowhere. I'm gonna knock on wood.
Unfortunately, he's a very quiet cat. He's not a big meower.
So cute.
Do we want to open it up to audience questions?
Sure. I think I missed a couple in the chat at least.
I can pop back on to help. Yeah, if you guys have questions in the audience, feel free to submit them either in the chat or the Q&A function. Either is fine. I'm keeping an eye on both. I'm loving all of these comments. I pre-ordered the book, but I haven't been at the bookstore yet since it's been out. So it's just waiting for me to pick it up. And like, the more you talk, the more I'm like, I gotta know what happens. I need to know what this means.
Byron, dude.
We didn't spoil anything.
No, I am more confused than I was at the start, which is what I want. So, which is perfect.
Good.
Like if you're reading and you think that's kind of weird, you're probably right, and you're probably onto something. So hold on to that thought. That's what you got to know about this.
There's nothing. There's nothing that is idle or just a throwaway in this. It is all bent towards the end, and I do think it would have been overstuffed as a short story. But as especially with the expansion as a novella, I think it's just not a word wasted. It is a lean, mean murder machine, or the little murder book, as my mom calls it.
The little murder book that could.
Yeah. So I saw Elizabeth asking one there.
Elizabeth says, question, how does Sophia miss the word babies from Mrs. Minky in chapter 3, such that she doesn't know what it is later? You're always so intentional.
Because Sophia isn't curious in the beginning of the story. That's part of what she acquires, a curiosity to and the not just agency, but sense of like core self that it takes to question what people have said, to admit you don't know what a word means. Like nobody, take her out of the whole speculative fiction, setting here. And, Sophia is the kind of person who would never interrupt someone to say, I don't know what that word means. Like that is a manners breach beyond her. But she also was created and it gets into it in the monologue at the end, to not be curious, to not be looking for things that she shouldn't. And so it is an expression of how much she allows to go on without interrogating it before there's something she absolutely can't ignore.
And then Elizabeth had to follow up about the 28 stairs. Are there 28 because of the moon cycle?
Yes. Yep.
Elizabeth, you're crushing
I didn't even pick up on that.
Because X, probably yes.
Good job, Elizabeth.
And if it's X because of the moon cycle, the answer is almost certainly yes.
So Sean,
but yeah, there's a bunch of stuff like that is just like, for example, one of there's a bunch of stuff like that is just based in like the most hardcore, bone deep folkloric like structures. So for example, one of the ones that I feel like I have not had anyone tell me that they noticed it, other than me telling people that this is what it means. But in the HOA agreement, when it talks about what you're not allowed to have on the sidewalk and what buildings you're not allowed, what outbuildings you're not allowed to build, all those things are sort of the basic building blocks of civilization: tanning hides, like threshing wheat, pottery, clay, the little handprints. Don't put little handprints on the sidewalks, like the cave hands, and mimetic representations like the cave horses. So we're calling back, even at the very beginning, although I admit it is extremely subtle, we're calling back to Paleolithic life all over the place with the HOA agreement.
I feel like there's going to be like a Tumblr post eventually or something, like decoding.
Well, I have always done well by the Tumblr kids. Yeah, so chalk drawings, handprints, mimetic representations, sporting equipment, stray rubbish, unsightly leaves, liquid snow piles, toys, personal belongings. These are the step up from animals. And then when it gets into the buildings, the outbuildings.
Yes.
Beekeeping, the milling of grain or the tanning of hides, beer making, soap making, cheese making, pottery, weaving, small vehicle repair, dancing, or other. I just love that small vehicle repair is thrown in there with tanning hides and beekeeping. Like, gotta get your Flintstones on. Right. Like part of why this book blew my mind so much is just that juxtaposition, like you were talking about, of like prehistory with like modern suburban life. I was like, mm-hmm.
Me the whole time.
Sean does ask a question, which you were like talking about earlier before the event, is like you were doing chapter titles for your next book. Mm-hmm. And Sean had a question about how do you sort through and make choices about chapter titles.
So Oh, we'll talk, remind us in a second, we'll talk about the chicken. So yeah, I love cool chapter titles, and I love weird, like really specific categorizations. Like these are all Apple varietals, or the chapter titles of this book. And then Space Opera, which is the one we were talking about, they're all titles of songs that participated in Eurovision sometime in the last 65 years. And I love doing stuff like that. I just love it. And I'm not gonna like psychoanalyze myself. I just really like it. So the way I do that essentially is I will make a list of the whole set of whatever it is I think I'm gonna use to delineate my titles. And I will list as many of them off the top of my head as I can. I will then go up, like look up a list of Apple varietals or whatever. And with Eurovision, because it's been 65 years and there's 20, well, there's more like 40 songs per year. There's 40 and then it's 20 in the grand final, but I gave myself permission to allow semifinal songs. It's 40 per year for 65 years. It's a lot. So for both Space Opera and Space Oddity, I have spent at least 2 days, not just going and finding all of the titles that I thought sounded interesting, but you have to like copy paste Google Translate, because a lot of them aren't in English, and find out what they are in their own language. Is there any arguments about with the English translation of it, that sort of thing. And then I will make the same list. I use Scrivener to write, so that list will just be in my research file. And then when it's time for a new chapter, I will go and pull one off the list that seems to resonate with the chapter. It will not necessarily stay the same title at the end of the chapter as it does in the beginning, but I like the first step in any part of my writing process, macro or micro, is names. It always is. I can't write Untitled for any amount of time. Like I have, even if it's not the title it ends up being, there has to be a working title. Everybody, all the characters need their names, and they need to really be their names, not working names. And like all the chapters need to have their title before I put word 1 down, even if it doesn't stay that way. Like everything, I suppose it's appropriate discussing about this book, everything must be named in this world. So that's kind of where I start always.
Right, now you can talk about the chicken.
Okay, so yeah, Mrs. Orpington, Mrs. Orpington gives Sophia a roaster. And like, okay, I know it's just a weird scene, but if you read it again, knowing everything, it's just like, she's like literally just weeping as she hands over of her baby, essentially, to Sophia. And like, it's when you don't know the sort of solution, it's just this completely bizarre, emotionally intense scene that just adds to the atmosphere of dread. And then when you do know, it's so fucked up. It's barely less fucked up that she also gives her a bag of eggs. Like, it's very strange. But people are weird. They do sell powdered placenta at farmers markets and things like that. So people are very strange. And one of the things about Arcadia Gardens is, it has, its level of technology is not exactly modern, but it's not exactly not either. Like, there's no cell phones, but it's implied that there are telephones. People do talk about calling, and the HOA talks about only a call away, which is another one of those sort of talking out of both sides of my mouth as to what a call means. But what I really wanted to sort of ride the line of is that kind of era between, I don't know, 2005 and 2012, where everyone was like making charcuterie and like weaving in their backyard and raising bees and chickens in their backyard, and like having rooftop farms and like chasing raw milk and all that. So like we were all just pretend like we couldn't deal with anything, so we pretended it was the 1800s for like a minute. And I fully did the same. No judgment at all. I'm still kind of doing that thing. So I wanted to kind of ride that, where it seems like they're just a lot of really, they definitely all be anti-vaxxers. Like, they're kind of rich ex-hippie that has forgotten where they came from, and now it's just all about who can have the most local food items. So I really wanted to kind of access that general idea, and also because that helps cover up why there have to be rules about beekeeping and stuff in the yard.
I love that so much. Oh my gosh.
Elizabeth does ask another question. Is she made of his eye because of Odin's eye, given the meaning of Sophia?
I thought about that and was like, I'm okay with that being in there, but the dominant reason that she's made of the eye is because she sees what none of the others see. You know, she looks through to the nature of things. Only the one just previous to her could as well. And I really like that's not part of the apocryphal thing, the women made of the various different parts, but I really, if there's a sequence here, then it seems like you might have tried some non-ribbed things from time to time. And so it was, actually went through a lot deciding which one she was, but ended on the eye because she finally does manage to see the truth.
Now in your bio, it mentions over 24 works in your backlist, Kat. Do you have any, I know this is terrible to ask of you, do you have any favorites? Do you have any?
Oh, sure. Everyone
darlings?
has, they'll tell you that they don't have favorite kids.
Yeah, they're like, no, I can't possibly choose.
Yeah, so I would think that for adults, it's probably Deathless, though it might be a toss-up between space opera and Deathless. For kids, the first Fairyland book, I'm very proud of. For short stories, I mean, there's a few that are really special to me, but my very favorite short story of mine that I've ever written is not out yet. And I would not think that I would say that about something I wrote this year, but I wrote a story called The Difference Between Love and Time. And it is in an anthology called Someone in Time. Jonathan Strawn again. Jonathan Strawn is getting a lot of good material out of me. He's a really good editor to work with. And that's coming out next year. And I am so proud of it. I really am. I think that like I managed to say a bunch of stuff that I hadn't said before, and I managed to, it's a time travel story, like the whole anthology is time travel romance. And so mine, because I can't just do the assignment. So mine is a love story between a girl and the entire space-time continuum, the embodied space-time.
It's like,
continuum.
I heard the prompt, but I
heard you
listen,
but I'm gonna do just
I heard you, but that's not what I'm gonna do.
I is what I is. And because of that, like the structure is a little weird. So I literally printed out the whole story, cut it into pieces, rearranged it on the wall. And like, I made myself cry. I don't make myself cry very much, but like, I love that story. And I think that I managed to do a lot in that story that I have done before, but often kind of cloaked in prose. And found a way to say it in a pretty grounded way for that being the story concept in this one. I love it. I'm really proud of it. It's my baby.
Do you know when it'll be out?
I think it's like April next year. I'm not totally sure. I have a collection of short fiction coming out next year that's the best of Catherynne Valente, which I've always wanted my whole life.
That's
I've always
so
wanted
exciting.
to have I know, right? Like, oh, literary dork. It's so cool. That is the first story in it, because that's how much I feel like I wrote my best short story this year.
That's exciting. And I remember you tweeting in preparation for this event about how the conversation will eventually get to the best apple varietal.
Yeah,
and I
will,
feel
always.
like we would be remiss if we did not have that conversation.
That is a very good point.
Yeah. So
yeah, I'm gonna head it off by saying I don't like apples. I know.
End of conversation.
I don't hate them, but I would almost always pick something over them. Oh, and I said before we were talking about the eye before, and I meant to say before we started talking about favorite babies, the Sophia's name originally was the Hebrew word for eye. It's one of the very few things that changed from the conception of this to now, but it definitely that was a big part of it.
Well,
okay, apples. Apple throwdown.
What's the Hebrew name?
Yeah.
Do you remember?
Oh, I don't
Kat?
remember now.
Oh.
I have ADHD. If my brain decides something's not important, it throws it down the oubliette forever.
Feel that.
It starts with AY.
Google.
Sorry.
Turn
Really
to
sorry.
Google, everybody.
Sorry. But yeah, so I will say though, my son and I went apple picking a few weekends ago, and it was, I think, Cortland and Macintosh. And I gotta say, they're pretty good. And but what I like about them most is that they're super, super, super red. He brought me this during a previous reading, super red, but then when you cut it open, it is so stark white. It's whiter than printer paper on the inside, the contrast is just so very Snow White and so arresting. I really like the aesthetics of them. I just, I could do a pair.
What's your favorite apple varietal? Pears.
Yes.
Once again, I hear and I see the assignment.
Exactly. Yes.
So actually, I have another question. I like Honeycrisp, by the way.
Yes, Honeycrisp, bitch. Same.
There's a new variety out that's like Honeycrisp mixed with something else.
All right.
Oh no.
Yeah.
I have a question. I know like we're almost out of time here, but comfort me with apples. Where did the title come from? Because she is not comforted by apples.
All right. So like here's how fully fair I played with my audience. It's from the fucking Bible. It's from the Song of Solomon. When this was a short story, I was going to use the whole line, which is "Comfort me with apples, for I am sick of love." But it's from I know, right? It's pretty cool. But that is way too much for a book cover. You're not putting that on a book cover. But yeah, it's straight up Old Testament, from the possibly single greatest piece of heterosexual love poetry out there.
That's how long it's been since I've picked up the Bible.
Let's not think for a second that I just pulled this out of the back of my head. I went looking for quotes.
Oh, that just again, this conversation just made me love the book even more. So now I have to reread it. That title though. Oh, I can't.
Well, I'm glad you like that. I also want to say I'm fully aware that there is another book with this title, and it's fine. I did feel a nonfiction memoir that came out 20 years ago.
Oh,
we'd be okay. But
yeah.
Twitter occasionally needs to remind me that another person named a book that I'm like, it's the Bible, man. Yeah, like I'm pretty sure that there's a book with the title of almost every line in the Bible sooner or later.
True.
So any final questions from the audience? What is next for you, Kat, in terms of, we talked a little bit about like your collections coming out. Are those the most recent things coming out?
So I have, The Pastor's Red came out this year, which is a cheerful climate change dystopia. I swear, honestly.
It's very cute. I bought it and read it.
Super cute dystopia. It's so hot right now. So that came out in July. The Fairyland 10th anniversary box set came out. I have a new middle grade novel called Osmo Unknown and the Eightpenny Woods, which is like Where the Wild Things Are meets Finnish mythology. It's kind of fairyland for boys. So that's out in April. Bastard Catherynne M Valente is out, I think, in the summer. And I'm working on Space Oddity right now, the sequel to Space Opera. It will be done very shortly. And then I'm on to my next book for Tor, which I would love to tell you about, but my editor and I have not yet agreed on a title. So until that happens, it's hard to talk about, but it's adult science fiction, and I'm actually super excited to continue working on it once Space Oddity is done. So yeah, I'm working on a lot of stuff, got books coming out next year. Don't worry. I took a little break to like create a human and not throw him to the wolves. And so now I'm back in. Elizabeth, my
I was like, Elizabeth, there's a Patreon.
Subscribe to my Patreon. Like and subscribe.
Smash that like button.
Subscribe to my Patreon, which is Cat Valente at Patreon. We do, as she mentions, we do character postcards every month. So everybody votes on which of my characters from all of my books is going to send everybody a postcard and like update them on life, all
That's
canon.
exciting.
And we do a bunch of other stuff too. It's super fun over there, and we maintain just about the nicest Discord on the internet. It is basically like a cached copy of the internet circa 2007.
That's amazing.
It's a nice place. And yeah, so, and I'm on Twitter at Cat Valente as well. So you can follow and yell at me or whatever, whatever you feel like doing. You do you. But that's where I live. I'm usually Cat Valente in a place, except somebody already took that name on Facebook. Very rude. So I'm CM Valente on Facebook.
Genevieve, what's next for you? Witch's Heart.
I cannot speak of it yet.
Oh,
publishing. So
that's exciting though.
Yeah.
It's good to not have something you can't talk about though.
Yeah, right. Because I want to be able to say what's next, but I can't. But I'm glad that I.
But it means that there's something next.
Right. Exactly. I'm glad that I have a next Cat Valente book because this is intimidating. Like I was like, wow, this is great. I want to read more about her, and then I was like, oh,
it's not all of them either.
Where do I start?
Where would you recommend Cat she go next?
So the thing that
space opera
the thing about me,
yeah,
probably space opera is what we talked about, but like I mentioned ADHD. I can't write the same book twice, and I don't really want to. So I'm always trying to like do something new and different.
Feel like genres are all different for your books, Cat.
Yeah,
I love that.
I always would do the thing that scares me that I haven't written before that would be a risk. I always want to take a risk. So it really depends on what you like to read. So when people ask what they should read first, I usually say, well, what's the last thing you really liked? And then I can sort of base it on that. Like, depends on if you like your fairy tales with like sex or like wide-eyed innocent children. Like I can do you both. I'm like the player and Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. Blood is compulsory, but everything else I can mix and match for you.
And one last question that I always ask every author that is on a panel that I have to host with. What are you reading and enjoying right now? Or what's the last really good book that you read that you want more people to read?
So I will say that what I've been reading recently is grim. So like it's not, I wouldn't necessarily like recommend that. So I've been reading Children of Time by H.G. Tchaikovsky for like 4 months now because I'm super scared of spiders. And there are a lot of spiders in this book, like sentient spiders, big ones. And so I can't read it before bed. So it's going very slow, but it's incredible. I would have quit many spiders before now if it were not an extremely good book. So I'm really enjoying that. The 5 books I read before that were about the AIDS crisis. So horrible, awful, so upsetting. Like I'm laughing, but it is a grim laugh. Very, very upsetting stuff. But I just like went very deep into a research hole about it. And so like literally I opened up my Kindle last night and I was like, oh God, it's just like AIDS, spiders. Very upsetting history. It's just awful. It's I should read a cheerful book. I should read it.
Switch it up for a minute.
Probably.
Genevieve?
This is the last great book I read.
Thank you.
Yesterday. And literally
you.
Everything else I've read before that is just research for my next book. Just Viking, everything. Viking. Similar to your AIDS, only Viking. So,
well,
like,
I'm
not as
slightly less
though.
completely soul crushing than my research hole has been. But you know, that's one of the great things about the writer's life is that we get to just drill deep on anything we care about because that's our job to turn it around and make a story of it. So I think that is one of the features, not bugs, of our very strange profession.
Well, as we wrap up, I'm putting the link in the chat one more time if you want to buy Kat's books or Genevieve's book from us. As a reminder, independent bookstore, we do ship throughout the US if you buy from us. If you don't buy from us, I do hope you will support your local independent bookstore, wherever you may be. It is holiday shopping season. I'm sure plenty of you have heard the supply chain is fully borked at the moment. So buy early if you can, buy local. And thank you all so much for coming tonight. Thank you, Kat. Thank you, Genevieve, for moderating and joining us. It was a pleasure. And thank you so much, everyone. I hope you all have a good night. Buy some books for the holidays for yourself. I can't wait to pick up my copy at the store this week and dive right into it and understand all of these references that Elizabeth kept bringing up. I need to know what these mean.
Awesome. It was great to meet you, Kat. It was wonderful to meet you.
It was awesome to meet you.
We should talking.
Connect off this.
Yeah. Thank you again.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.